The roar of the crowd filled the arena, a symphony of excitement mixed with the rhythm of drums, whistles, and chants that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of the venue. Mexican flags waved high above, and the energy surged as the ring announcer prepared to introduce two men who would soon stand face to face under the blazing lights. On one side stood Saul Canelo Alvarez, the young Mexican sensation, already hailed as a future superstar despite his youth. Across from him was Leonardo Tyner, better known by his intimidating nickname, Painver, a rugged American fighter with a reputation as wild as his grin. Canelo, only 29 years old at the time but already a seasoned professional with 5 years in the game, carried an undefeated record. In just half a decade, he had forged an identity not only as a rising Mexican star, but also as a figure representing the future of Mexican boxing itself. His record glistened with wins, most of them secured by knockout, each victory adding weight to the legend he was building. Yet what truly defined him was not only the numbers on his record, but also his style. Calculated aggression, clinical counterpunching, and a calm but ruthless approach that made him seem more like a surgeon dissecting his opponents than a fighter indulging in the spectacle of violence. Unlike many boxers who relished in theatrics and showmanship, Canelo was reserved, focused solely on dismantling whatever man dared to stand across from him. Leonardo Tyner was the opposite in every conceivable way. He was brash, raw, and short in stature but filled with energy that radiated recklessness. With a mischievous grin and a savage look in his eyes, he carried himself more like a brawler from the streets than a refined professional athlete. His style reflected this, chaotic, unpredictable, and fearless. Tyner's record boasted 21 wins and only 2 losses, a commendable tally, but it was not the numbers that earned him his following. Instead, it was his sheer wildness, his refusal to step back, his habit of laughing at punches, and his iron chin that no opponent had ever cracked. Never once had he been knocked out. Never once had he surrendered. He thrived not in safety but in chaos, rushing forward, eating punches, and roaring back with savage combinations. His was a fighting style not forged in gyms but born of raw instinct and the streets themselves. The contrast between them was magnetic, the allure of precision versus chaos, the poised Mexican technician against the American madman. Excitement surged when rumors began to circulate that even Floyd Mayweather Jr., the undefeated maestro of defense, had taken notice of Canelo's growing reputation. The thought that this young Mexican could one day face the pound-for-pound king electrified fans, adding another layer of intrigue to every fight he entered. The night of the fight between Canelo and Tyner unfolded with an atmosphere so thick it could be felt like heat on the skin. The crowd erupted with chants of, "Canelo! Canelo!" as the Mexican walked calmly to the ring, his expression collected, his steps measured. Beside him was his trainer, Chepo Reynoso, whose steady voice had guided him from boyhood to this very stage. Canelo's crimson gloves glistened under the lights, every ounce of their padding promising pain to anyone reckless enough to step into their path. Tyner entered differently, bouncing, grinning, his eyes flashing with a kind of wild fire that unnerved even seasoned spectators. He moved with swagger, almost mocking the solemnity of the moment, waving at the crowd as if to taunt them. His very presence seemed to spit in the face of the Mexican faithful who filled the arena, daring them to boo louder. The bell rang. From the opening round, the contrast between the two fighters became apparent. Canelo, calm and measured, circled with patience, snapping his left jab with precision to keep the American at bay. His movements were calculated, his head slipping shots, his eyes studying every twitch of his opponent's body. He avoided unnecessary exchanges, saving his energy for counters. Tyner, on the other hand, came forward like a storm. He charged with reckless abandon, firing hooks from awkward angles, grinning each time a punch landed on his face. He looked less like a man strategizing and more like a predator enjoying the chaos of the hunt. Canelo's trainer's advice was clear: use the jab, keep the distance, and do not fall into the brawler's trap. And for most of the early rounds, Canelo did exactly that. He peppered Tyner with clean jabs and counter-rights, stepping aside to avoid the reckless swings. Yet, to the surprise of many, Tyner absorbed the punches with almost supernatural resilience. His iron chin lived up to its reputation. Even as Canelo landed sharp combinations to the head and devastating hooks to the body, Tyner only grinned wider, shaking his head as if to say, "Is that all you've got?" The Mexican commentators called the fight with passion, warning Canelo not to underestimate the American. "He opens his mouth, he risks a broken jaw," one exclaimed as Tyner grinned mockingly mid-fight. Another reminded viewers that while Canelo was dominating, he could not allow himself to grow careless. Tyner was too dangerous, too unpredictable to be dismissed outright. As the rounds progressed, the pattern became clear. Canelo remained precise, landing with accuracy, particularly with his left hook to the body, a punch he had already begun to master, one that would later become his trademark. Time and again, his glove dug into Tyner's ribs, forcing him to grunt but never to crumble. On the outside, Canelo's calm superiority was evident, but up close, Tyner's resilience and chaotic energy made every exchange unpredictable. By the middle rounds, the fight had turned into a showcase of contrasting wills. Canelo's discipline was on full display. He slipped punches, countered cleanly, and worked combinations both upstairs and downstairs. Tyner's wildness, however, kept fans on edge. Even when hurt, he came forward, laughing, daring Canelo to hit harder. At one point, after being clipped with a crisp right hand to the chin, he opened his mouth wide in a grin, taunting the Mexican crowd, a move that drew both gasps and cheers. It was a dangerous game, but it was who Tyner was, a man who thrived in fire. The late rounds approached, fatigue began to show on Tyner. The endless punishment from Canelo's precise body shots had slowed him down. His swings became wider, his feet heavier. Yet even then, he remained on his feet, never breaking, never giving Canelo the satisfaction of seeing him fall. The commentators marveled at his durability, at his refusal to bow. "What a difficult fighter," they exclaimed. "He takes everything and keeps coming." Canelo, on the other hand, grew more confident as the fight wore on. His defense tightened, his counters became sharper, and his combinations flowed with more ease. He had found his rhythm, dissecting the brawler piece by piece. Still, he never let his guard drop completely, knowing one wild punch could change everything. The final rounds showcased Canelo's dominance. He hammered Tyner with combinations, snapping his head back with right hands, digging relentlessly to the body with left hooks. Tyner staggered at times but refused to fall. His chin remained iron, his spirit unbroken. The crowd, though firmly in Canelo's corner, could not help but respect the American's sheer will. He was not merely surviving, he was challenging, provoking, and forcing Canelo to grow. When the final bell rang, the outcome was clear. Canelo had dominated, his superior skill, defense, and tactical brilliance carrying him to victory. The judges announced a unanimous decision in his favor, and the Mexican crowd erupted in celebration. Yet the story did not end there. After the fight, Leonardo Tyner, though beaten, held his head high. In interviews, he boasted that he had hit Canelo harder than anyone else ever had. It was partly bravado, but there was truth in his words. He had stood toe-to-toe with one of boxing's brightest young stars and had not been knocked out, not even dropped. His chin, his wild energy, and his refusal to surrender had made the fight memorable. He had left his mark not only on Canelo but also on the fans who had witnessed his unbreakable spirit. And the months that followed, Tyner continued his career, solidifying his reputation as a spoiler. He pulled off surprising upsets, including a stunning knockout of a promising young contender named Anton Smith. With each victory, he reminded the boxing world that he was not to be overlooked, that beneath the chaos was a man capable of shocking favorites. No one ever managed to knock him out. His chin became the stuff of legend, and his image was forever etched into the memories of fans as the grinning brawler who laughed in Canelo's face. For Canelo, the fight was a stepping stone, a valuable lesson on patience, discipline, and the danger of underestimating an unpredictable opponent. He had won, but he had also grown. Facing a man like Tyner, who refused to crumble, tested his composure and sharpened his tactical mind. It was a fight that helped shape the champion he would become, a defining moment on the road to greatness. Years later, as Canelo rose through the ranks to become a world champion, Tyner's name would resurface in conversations, remembered not as just another opponent but as a man who gave Canelo one of his earliest challenges. Fans would recall the grin, the taunts, the way he opened his mouth and dared fate to break his jaw, and the way he stood tall until the final bell. It was more than a fight. It was the meeting of two opposing forces, the precision of discipline against the chaos of madness, the calm surgeon against the fearless brawler. And though only one emerged victorious, both carved their names into the story that night. Canelo walked away as the victor, his reputation strengthened, his future brighter than ever. Tyner walked away as the unbroken warrior, the man with the iron chin, the man who had faced the storm and laughed in its face. And so, in the annals of boxing, their encounter remains, a reminder that victory is not always measured only in wins and losses, but in the spirit displayed, the courage shown, and the memories left behind.